Okay, so let us upload this file. Let me upload a file. Right, don't worry about the permissions, properties and everything. We can just upload. Okay, so now what will happen in the US bucket? See, the file is still not there. Why is it not there? It has not been replicated. Any idea?
Sorry?
It has not yet replicated. I mean, it is not replicated. Why is it not replicated?
Due to the permission thing.
Okay, permission. But now you see it has replicated. Okay, so what basically is happening is, I told you it is asynchronous. First it is uploaded to Mumbai, it showed you okay, but then when I came immediately and checked in US, it was not there. Why it is not there? Because immediately it will not be there. Because what is actually happening in the background, it is moving the data from Mumbai to US. So it will take some time depending upon your file size, the location of the bucket. It is not like instantly it will be there. The instant it is there in Mumbai, it will be in US. No, it depends upon your file size and how far away your bucket is. So it may take a few seconds or a few minutes also, which is why they have added this new thing called replication time control, especially for people who are uploading large files. Suppose I uploaded a 1 GB file, then in Mumbai it will take a couple of minutes to upload. Then after it uploads there, then to do the replication it will take a more time, right? So if you want to make sure that your objects are replicated within 15 minutes most of the time, then you can enable replication time control. But even then it will take a few seconds or a few minutes depending upon the file size and your bucket location. It is not instant, right? Which is why the first time you didn't see, I just refreshed a few minutes, a few seconds later, and you saw the file. It is the same thing. Anything you upload, it depends upon the file size, the destination bucket, right? So yeah, or if I upload some small file, probably it will replicate much faster. Now you see in Mumbai it has already uploaded. I'm coming to the US. You see it is not there. Maybe in a few seconds it will come here. So when you are practicing this, don't say it is not there. Just wait for a couple of minutes and then see whether it is there or it is not there. Because we are going to upload small files usually in a minute or usually in a minute or two maximum. You will see the file here. Now you see it is here, right? So this is the basic. This is what is happening. Now there are other possibilities, right? So you might have, what will happen if I upload some file in the US bucket, that is in the destination. If I upload some file, what will happen, right? So let us upload and see, right? So let us upload some file directly in the destination and see, right? Right, so in the destination I uploaded this object, right, called AWS services.png. So what will happen in the source? Right, so what do you think will happen in the source? Okay, so the first thing to remember is, here the replication happens only from source to destination, not the other way around, right? If you upload anything in the destination, it will be in the destination, because both are buckets. You can use all other features, but this replication will happen only from source to destination. You can use the other bucket for directly uploading files also, it does not matter, right? But it will not be replicated. So how many hour times you refresh or you wait, it will not happen. But while practicing, you just wait and check, because there are a lot of behavior over here, lot of possibilities, right? So now let me know what other thing you
And
want to see. I will try
see, and Siddharth, like one more thing. So we are in the destination point here. So can we make this as a source for some other purpose?
That's what I said, that is currently not possible. I think you can try that.
Oh,
You can create another bucket. So That's what I mean. I don't think it is still possible. That's what I said. You can do only from here to from source to destination. You cannot do source to destination again from here to here. I don't think it is still possible. If they have made possible, then I have missed that feature. Okay. So you can, as far as I know, you can do only from one source to one destination. You cannot do one source to multiple destination. You cannot do one source to one destination again from this destination to another destination. You can't do. Right? You can try it and tell me what you get. Okay? You can try it and tell me what you get. I will also probably try it. I have been waiting to try it, but I have not found the time to try it. I don't think it is still available, as far as I know. Right?
Okay, and one more thing. See, like in a Hadoop, like how we say replication is default as three replications. Okay. So, but here in AWS, it's not like that, right? I mean, I'm not exactly comparing, but we need to explicitly do it for replication, right?
What do you mean explicitly? I didn't understand.
The way what we are doing now.
Yeah, you see, that's what I said. When you are using any region, so in AWS, you generally use one region. So if your bucket is in one region, depending upon the storage class, what it will do, it will use the different availability zones. Now, for you, availability zone is not important. For you, you want to protect your data against entire Mumbai failure, right? So you want to use multiple regions to store 2 copies of your backup. So you are using this. If you don't want for you just one region, what do you say, availability is enough for you, then you don't need to use replication, because your data is anyway replicated in multiple availability zones in Mumbai. If you use standard, what are they saying? We are replicating your data in 3 availability zones. So even if this is not enough for you, or your backup policy or your company says that your data has to be in 2 different geographic locations in AWS, or 2 different AWS accounts you should keep your backups, then you can use this replication. This I'm not saying that everybody will use. You have to use this feature. This is for certain use cases, right? So it is not like your database backups or those type of things, right? Like mirroring or log file transaction. No, this is just total object based, right? If you put a file here, it will be over here, right?
Yeah. So this is on top of the standard three
Yes.
availability zones, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So standard and these availability zones are in Mumbai only. What if the entire Mumbai has problem? Right? What if the entire Mumbai location has a problem? So your company is scared of that, or it is just a, what do you say, a backup policy or rule that they say that you have to store 2 copies in 2 different geographic locations. Then you have to use a bucket in a different location. You cannot say in Mumbai it is replicating 3 availability zones. Yeah, they know that it is replicating 3 availability zones, but still they want in 2 different geographic locations. They don't want in Mumbai. They don't want to keep all the data only in Mumbai. They want to have a copy in a different country, right? Like for example, now TikTok or whatever, now they are banning in India, means then what you will do, right? So for whatever reason, whether it is data loss, data privacy, what do you say, a backup policy rule, for all those things, right? They want to keep in different locations. In S3 you can use cross region, replication, cross region replication or same region replication, right? Okay. So now there are other possibilities also, right? Can you think of other possibilities, like what will happen? Now we have configured the replication from Mumbai to US, right? So I'm putting the file over here, it came over here. I put a file over here, it didn't come over here. So we know it will work from only from here to here. In the reverse, it will not work. So now what are the other things? What are the other possible behaviors or other possible things you can do, and you want to see the behavior, right? So next you may ask, what will happen if I remove the file in the source, or if I remove the file in the destination? What will happen if I update the file in the source, or what will happen if I update the file in the destination? All these are practically possible, right? So all these behavior we have to see. I will show you a couple. If you want to see some other behavior, let me know, because this behavior you cannot control. This happens or it does not happen, right? If the replication is not happening in the backward direction, it does not happen. That is the current feature. You cannot make it happen.
Okay. So I have one question
Yeah.
respect to this thing. So we have on policy, life cycle policy. In case if I implement the life cycle policy in source bucket, will it reflect on the destination or not? For example, cleaning up the deleted data. So when you are
Yeah, yeah, I'll show
uh,
you. I'll show you that. See, what is life cycle policy doing? It is going to do one of those things. Either it is going to remove the data or it is going to transition the data. It cannot do anything else.
yeah,
So either you can do it manually and check, or you can do it with life cycle policy and check. Simple, right? Life
okay,
cycle
okay,
policy is not something special. It is just automating these two works. That's all.
okay. So it automatically sync up with the replication.
No, don't assume that it will automatically sync up. You have to check and see, because some behavior we will
Okay,
assume that okay, it should happen, but it will not happen because S3 does not allow you to do. It does not do that. Now, for example, you think okay, replication means in the destination bucket, if I put file in the source, also it should be there. Some people think like that, right? But it does not happen
okay,
like that, because according to S3, replication happens only from source to destination. It does not happen in the reverse direction. So don't assume. Just check what is it in real time. If you're doing replication, you want to see a certain behavior. You do that and
okay,
see whether it is happening or no. If it does not happen, it does not
okay,
happen. That's all. You can't do anything about it. That's what
okay,
I'm
okay.
trying to say
Because
here.
yeah, because why I'm asking is like as per knowledge, like whatever operation we are generally doing in the destination, it will automatically reflect into that destination. Correct.
Yeah.
Whatever doing operation do it in the source, it will automatically reflect in the destination.
Yeah.
So even delete or
Yes.
uploading new files,
Yeah.
cleaning up whatever.
So in AWS,
So
we should not,
logically, I'm saying,
yeah,
yeah,
logically we think like that, because based on our replication with other things like databases and all that, we think it should happen. But here it is
yeah,
different. In AWS, we should not assume
okay,
that what we are seeing somewhere is happening, or what we think is obvious. So it is not like that, right? Don't assume,
okay,
but just check, because especially because I have checked, I know what will happen. So
okay, okay.
any feature in AWS, not only replication, anything you come across, you just have to
Hmm.
see how it is working. You just do it once and see, even before you implement it.
Okay, okay,
Okay, so we'll go ahead and see now what we will see in the source bucket. Now you're saying, now let us say I'm going to remove some file in the
yeah,
source. Maybe the first we can see that. Okay,
yes,
so now you see in the destination, first thing is the different storage class. For the files which were replicated, you see different storage class. For the file which I
yes,
manually uploaded, it is in the standard. That is the default.
yeah,
For the files which are replicated, it changes the storage class automatically. Right. Now we come
yes,
back to the source, and now I'll upload another file so that we have a few files to work with. Let me just quickly upload another file also. Okay, so we have uploaded 1.txt AWS contact us. Here also you should see AWS contact us. So let me remove this AWS services file. We know that it does not replicate backward. So let me just clean this up to avoid confusion. Right. So again, remember, now this bucket has the versioning enabled. So the versioning related features also will apply. So what will happen if I remove a file in the hide view? It is actually hidden. It is not actually deleted. Right. Because now these buckets have versioning also enabled. So if you actually want to delete, what you need to do, you need to what do you say, go to the version and delete the specific version. Only then the file will be removed, because these buckets have now versioning also enabled. Right. So now let us go back over here, and let us see, we should have three files over here, right? We have both source and destination, same files now. Now let us start doing certain things and seeing what is the behavior. So first thing I'm saying, what will happen if I remove the file in the source? Right. I'm removing the file 1.txt from the hide view. So what is technically happening in the source bucket? The file is being hidden. You can go to show the file is still there, but it is being hidden by a something called the delete marker.
yes,
So this is in the source. So what will happen in the destination? Will the file also be hidden in the destination? So we expect it to be hidden, but I know it will not be hidden. So you can just refresh and check. Don't immediately say it is not happening. Just wait for 1 or 2 minutes, because they are small files. Usually if it happens quickly, or it doesn't. right? So earlier they used to replicate this behavior, right? Earlier, a year ago or a year and a half ago, they used to replicate this behavior. If you remove something in the source bucket, the same thing, that is, it used to be hidden in the destination bucket also. Now they are not doing that, because some people used to remove the file and then confusion. So to avoid that, now they have stopped replicating the deletes, right? Earlier it used to happen, because if you see some earlier what do you say, uh, my classes or somebody else's videos or whatever, you would have seen that uh, the delete is also replicated, but now it is not replicated. Okay, only in the source the file gets hidden. In the destination there is no change. Okay, now the next is, now what will happen if I overwrite the file in the source? So let me try to overwrite aws.png. Okay, so what will happen if you overwrite the file, right? You see now it is overwritten 855.42. So because this bucket has the versioning enabled, so technically what is happening, now there will be two versions of the file, right? Because versioning is there, right? The previous one become the previous version, the new one is the latest version. So both versions are there. What do you see outside? You see the latest version. So what happens in the destination bucket? Right now it is 839. Now let us see whether that change is replicated, whether that update is replicated. Again, don't just hit refresh once, just wait. Sometimes here this refresh might not work. You need to hit this refresh here, right? So just wait for 1 or 2 minutes after you do any such change, so that you are 100% sure that it is happening or not happening, right? So now how many versions we have, right? We have all files. See, one version in the destination, that is only the latest versions we have, right? So let us see whether it is happening in the destination, right? You see now it is, you can see the 855.42 file, right? Same 855.42 file, right? So now what is happening here? If I go to the show view, then you will see two versions for AWS PNG. So if you overwrite the file in the source, that is replicated in the destination also. Okay, if you overwrite, I mean, if there are multiple copies in the source, then that same thing is replicated in the destination also. Now again, if I overwrite aws.png, here also you will have three versions, right? In the source also you will have three versions, in the destination also you will have three versions, right? So what is the other behavior? Anything else you want me to show? Because there are many possibilities here over here, right? Now what if I go in the show view and I remove a specific version? I'm not deleting from outside, I'm going into the show version and I'm removing a particular version. That means I'm actually technically removing the file. I'm removing the 839 file in the source, right? So now there is only one latest version for AWS PNG. There is only one version, that is the latest version. Here we have two versions. So will this previous version, 839 version, be removed? No, it will not be removed, because they don't replicate the deletes anymore.
Yes, yes, it should not be removed.
It will still be there. So like this, you can have multiple what do you say, possibilities. So you asked about something like, what will happen if I change the storage class? That is either through lifecycle policy or manually. Both are doing the same thing. Let us say you are changing the storage class, right, from standard to something else, right? Either through lifecycle or manual, it does not matter. Let us say you are putting it in Glacier. Then what will happen in the destination? For which file we are using? contactus.html. What will happen? Okay. So do you think it will change?
No, it won't change.
We will just
It
wait
won't
and see.
change.
That's all, right? It should not change ideally, because here we are already saying use one zone IA explicitly. So here, if you want to
Yeah.
change, what do? You can use the lifecycle policy over here, because all the other features can be used along with this. This replication has a certain behavior. The other features have other certain behaviors, right? So you can use this bucket to upload other files also. It will accept, right? So yeah. So these are some of the things that can happen, right? These are some of the things which will be replicated, some of the things which will not be replicated, right? The deletes are usually not replicated, and in the reverse direction it is not replicated. And other than that, you have the versioning, right? So this is replication. Same region replication is also the same thing, right? Same region is the buckets will be in the same region, but how you configure it is the same, right? How you configure it is the same steps. So if you want to see, right, what I just showed you, how to how to configure the replication, right? You go to what do you say, management. You can go to replication, and you can, what do you say, you have the documentation for cross region replication. You can follow that. So even before you add the rule, you will see a help over there, right? So let me go and disable the rule, right? So you can disable, edit, or modify the rules, but whatever has already happened, right? It will not undo the changes generally, right? So let me do this. Sorry, let me clean this up. So now if you want to do cross region application, you can quickly click on this link and keep it open and bookmark it, right? So whatever I showed you, you will have the instructions over here. So when to use cross region replication, all that stuff, right? So that's what I was going to explain next thing, right? When to use cross region replication, right? So I told you mostly it is for compliance requirements. Mostly, practically speaking, this is for most common reason why people use cross region replication, or why they are forced to use cross region replication, for compliance reasons, right? To store your data across multiple geographically different regions, right? And then the other stuff, right, to minimize latency. Like I said, this is not only for backups. Suppose you have uh, customers across the world, right? And somebody in India or somebody in US, they need to access the files. For them, it will be faster if their bucket is closer to them, right? The closer the bucket is to your users or to you, the faster your speed is. The latency is lower, throughput is higher. So for those type of applications, because S3 we are not using only for manually uploading, downloading files, it is used by applications also. I told you, right? I've shown you example of embedding the URLs and all that stuff, right? So it is just not used for manually uploading and downloading the files. It is used programmatically also by the developers, right? So now, for example, you have like something like some online, what do you say, streaming, like Netflix. So maybe they can store their files in different buckets, because people are using this service from across the world. So if somebody from India is watching a movie, maybe it is coming from the S3 bucket in Mumbai. Maybe somebody from US is watching, maybe for them that movie is coming from the US bucket, right? Something like this, right? But actually they are not doing this, but it is possible. They are doing the same thing in a different way actually. Okay, we will see how that is also being done. So it is not only for just storing your static backups or something like that, right? So if your application is used by people from different locations, or people from different locations need to access the same data, right? Suppose you have a team that works in India and you have a team in US, maybe they both need access to some common files. You can do replication between India and US bucket, so that the US guys can take it from the US bucket, India guys can take it from the India bucket, right? So the uses are, I mean, whatever you can think of, but these are some what do you say, standard stuff, right? And when will you use same region replication? Again, same region replication is you want to maintain multiple copies of your backup, but you want to do it in the, what do you say, same region, right? Or across different accounts, right? Sometimes they will say you have to store data in two different AWS accounts, even though it is same region, does not matter. Okay, so one more thing here to remember is, right, so when cross region replication was there, right, when only cross region replication was there. Because now same region is also there, I don't think so this is valid now, but when only cross region replication was there, there was this strange behavior, because I have come across this. So when only cross region replication was there, we tried to do replication between the Mumbai bucket and I think Singapore bucket, right? We configured the Mumbai as the source, I remember, around 3 years ago or something, and the Singapore bucket as the destination bucket, right? So the configuration, it went through smoothly, right? So we specify the source bucket, we enable the versioning, we specify the destination bucket, we enable versioning, we change the storage class, right? We give the permission and then we create the role. Then what happened? People started uploading the files, but the replication was not happening. Then okay, we thought it will take some time, then we waited, still it was not happening. Then we checked the rule, okay, everything is normal, why it is not working? For a day or two we were breaking our head. Then we contacted AWS support. What they told is, right, they told Mumbai and Singapore both are same region. Why they are both same region? Because both belong to Asia Pacific, right? If you look at the AWS table, it will say Asia Pacific, in bracket it will say Mumbai, Asia Pacific Singapore, Asia Pacific Australia. So that is why in the beginning itself I told you, for all practical purposes, for most of the services, what is in the bracket we call the region. But if you want to speak strictly technically, then Asia Pacific is the region, right? So when cross region replication was there, we could not replicate between Mumbai and Singapore because both belong to Asia Pacific.
And ideally, this scenario seems to be the same SRR, right?
Yes,
Correct.
now it is possible. Now if you put both of
Yeah,
them,
now
it
it's
will work.
possible.
Now you will not see. Now you
Correct.
will not know the difference, because earlier we assumed that Mumbai, Singapore are different region, because for all other practical purposes they are different. But now it does not matter. Now if you put Mumbai, Singapore also, it will work. Okay, now it falls under same region. But how do you do same region? It is also in the what do you say, same steps. You don't go to any other different what do you say, different window or anything. Here you just, the source will be in the same region, that's all. There is no separate window or wizard for creating same region replication. It is the same thing, right? Whether you click here, get started, or add rule anywhere, it just depends upon the location of your buckets. If it is in the same thing, you call. But now it does not matter. But if you want to be 100% technical, right, according to AWS, then if you do Mumbai and Singapore, you should not say it is same region. Technically you should not say it is cross region. It is technically same region, but for practical purposes, people use this as different region because they are geographically different, even though according to AWS it is Asia Pacific region. Okay, so now it doesn't matter. So you can try this, like you said, right? You might have different possibilities. So if you are stuck somewhere, you let me know. That's all, right? Because the possibilities are, a lot of possibilities are there, right? The behavior. So there is no additional, what do you say, as such cost for replication. You pay for the storage fees, obviously, and then you pay for the data transfer, right? You pay for the data transfer. If it is across regions, you pay for data transfer across regions. That price table we saw, right? If you are moving data from S3 to another region or something, that small data transfer fee you might pay, because the data is actually being transferred from one region to another region, or from what do you say, within the region, right? There is some data transfer happening over here inside S3, so that is the additional fee, right? So in S3, usually after you finish practicing, to clean up, what you can do is you can simply remove the buckets. You can empty the bucket and remove it. You don't have to go ahead and deactivate one by one feature. Okay, you don't have to go and deactivate one by one feature. Suppose you enabled the lifecycle policy, you did the replication, right? You can just go and you can empty the bucket and remove the bucket. Whatever you did, everything is removed, right? You can empty the bucket and then you can delete the bucket to avoid any accidental costs or something, right? Because some places you might make your bucket public also, right? Like in yesterday's example I showed you just for demo. So you don't want to keep any public buckets in your account. Maybe by mistake you might have enabled the read write permissions and all that stuff. To avoid all that confusion, just empty your bucket and delete your buckets, once you finish practicing whatever you have done, right? So this is called cross region replication. Okay, or sorry, it's just called replication. Let us not, because I'm used to saying cross region replication because that's what we do a lot, right? So yeah, so that is replication. You have two what do you say, two categories over there. Okay, so now let us just take a small break for 15 minutes. Okay, I'll catch you guys at 9:25. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, so let us continue, right? We saw was that replication now, right? Okay, the next topic we will talk about is static website hosting. Okay, so static website hosting is another feature on S3, right? So what is this static website hosting, or how does it work? So we all know what is a website, right? Let us say it's a collection of some pages, right? So basically your websites can be either static or dynamic. What do we mean by dynamic websites? Is usually something in some programming language like PHP, .NET, Java. So why these are dynamic is because they need some server side processing, right? So what does this mean? Suppose you have a developer who develops pages, I mean who develops an application or a website in any of these programming languages. Then to host it you need a server, right? On the server you will have an OS, let us say, and then you will have a web server like Tomcat or Apache or IIS or something, and then you will also need that framework or that what do you say, like Java, you need Java, right? For a .NET site, you need a .NET framework. For PHP, you need to have PHP installed, right? You need these frameworks. Otherwise, that will not work, right? The end user, he will see it in his browser, right? But what is given by a developer, a piece of code? It might be in C or it might be in Java, right? It can be in anything. So how is the Java code being converted into a page which the end user can see using this on the server? On server some processing is happening, that is on the server you need whatever Java or .NET for or PHP or whatever that is it is being developed in. It needs that framework to be installed on the machine, and it needs an application server or a web server to serve the content, right? So these are all dynamic pages, right? Then what is static website? So static is usually HTML pages and CSS with some images and videos. You can have images, videos, all that stuff you can have, but it is usually like a HTML page, because to view a HTML page you don't need any server or anything, right? If I have a HTML page, I can open it straight away in my browser. My browser is able to interpret or convert that HTML code into a user friendly format, right? So I have a few HTML pages. Let me quickly open them. Where are my HTML pages? Just give me a minute. Right here you see I have some HTML pages, right? So if you know HTML, fine, or you can just copy paste some code online, HTML files, just to practice, right? Usually this content your what do you say, the developer usually gives the content, but yeah, to practice this you need a couple of HTML pages. So let me just open a couple of pages which I have, and probably you can see, right? So here you see you have some videos, right? Let me open one more thing and see. Sorry, some HTML pages, right? So all this is HTML code, right? Let us take this file index1.html. right? Index1.html, it has some HTML code. But if I open this in my browser straight away, right? If I open this in my browser, then what you see, you will see this thing. That is, my browser is able to, what do you say, interpret that page, right, into a user friendly thing. If I open it in a text editor, you will get something like the same thing for whatever the file is, right? Here you see I have some other file, right? So like this, if I open it in the browser, my browser is able to show you. So here you see this is a HTML page, demo.html, right? So in this page, what is there? Just code generally, right? And the video is in YouTube. It is not located on my laptop. I'm just embedding the code for YouTube video, right? From YouTube you can upload the video, you can get the embed code, you can embed, or in S3 you can upload the video, you can get the URL, you can embed, right? So now what is happening, I'm not storing the video on my laptop, I'm storing it somewhere else, but my laptop is able to show that, right? It is going to the internet. This file is on my local machine, but this content is coming from internet, and I don't need any additional software or anything to do this. Just my browser is able to interpret the HTML page. So these are called static websites, right? These type of pages, this type of collection of pages. Suppose you have a small proof of concept, or you want to host some small thing, right, which is only going to be mostly seen by the user, no interaction, no database, right? For those type of things. Now let us say I'm taking AWS classes, right? So I can create a small website for myself, right? I can put let us say 3 pages, 3 or 4 pages, right? Simple HTML coding, right? I can create 1 page's home page, right, where I will have my information and what are the courses I am taking. Then I will have AWS, like DevOps or whatever. Then if you click on AWS, it will open the AWS page. Here I will have the AWS related 2 or 3 videos, introduction videos, some demo videos, right? And then I will have one for DevOps, and then one page I will have contact us. I can put this in simple HTML. I can embed the videos in YouTube. I can upload the videos to YouTube and embed the videos in my website. So the people can access everything from my website. They don't have to go to YouTube or anywhere. And this entire thing I can put on S3. I don't need a separate server. You can create a server and put. But when you have a server, what happens? You have to manage the OS, you have to manage the server, you have to manage the, what do you say, the web server. Then you have to, what do you say, take care of the storage and all that. You have to maintain a server. Basically, if something happens to this server, then your application will be down, your website will be down, right? And then how much traffic it can handle, again it depends. If you have a small server, it can handle only a little bit of traffic. Then if your traffic is increasing, you need to add more servers or increase its configuration and all that stuff. So in S3 you don't have to worry about that. You just have to upload your content and do some basic configuration, and then it is going to scale automatically. Whether one person is going to access or a million people are going to access, it is going to work, right? So but it is possible only if it is static website, no dynamic content. For dynamic content, you need server side processing. For that, you can't use S3. Okay, so we'll quickly see how to do this. This is called static website hosting in S3. So you can use a single HTML page or a sample HTML application you can get online, right? You can download it, or I will upload it in Google Drive. You can take it. That is not a big deal. We are not worried about HTML coding. We are worried about how to host it in S3, right? So you can just go to Google and say sample HTML web pages or simple HTML websites. You will get a lot of content, right? Something with a few pages or whatever, right? So I already have a what do you say, a group of HTML pages. So let us see how to host that. Okay, so obviously you need a bucket for that. So let us go ahead and create a bucket, right? You can give whatever name you want for your bucket. So here you have some conditions again, right? The bucket naming conditions still apply. So here is probably where you might use a dot in your bucket name. So generally I say avoid the dot, but for static website hosting you may want to use the dot, because when you are creating static website hosting, S3 will give you a URL for the website, because how do people access the website? You need a URL. So S3 will give you some, what do you say, something with S3 in that, like a object name, how it looks, right? Similarly, the URL will also look. It will say S3 hyphen website, your bucket name, right? Something like this. So, but your end users, you don't want to give this URL. You want to give them a friendly URL like your domain name. Like I will say AWS training.com. I want to give my user this. I don't want to give this. So then you have to use DNS. That we will see in the DNS class. But in order to do that, usually your bucket name should match the domain name, right? Your bucket name should match the domain name. Otherwise, it will be a problem. You cannot do it. It is very, what do you say, difficult to do it. So if you want to use a friendly domain name, if you have a domain name, then first make sure that that bucket name is available. Because if this bucket name somebody else is using, then I cannot create that bucket name. I might own the domain, right? Domain you can pay money and buy, but bucket name you cannot still pay money and buy. If somebody else is using this awstraining.com, then I cannot use it. Then I have to do some other work around forwarding here and there, and that is additional. What do you say? That is not what do you say? Officially straightforward, right? So
So
some DNS,
Siddharth,
yeah.
so here when you say this one, bucket name should matches the domain name. So that's default mandatory, right?
No. See, if you don't want to use the domain name, right? So let me create this and show first. Then probably you'll understand. So let me create a bucket name. I will just call it demo something. Let us just use our usual thing. Let us say demo September 6th, right? And you can create
Hello.
in. Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, unable to hear you, bro.
Hello.
Your voice is slow, so feeble actually.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
No, actually, why I can hear you, but voice is so feeble.
Oh, I think my
For
headphone is
me, it's
having.
fine.
No, my headphone is having some problem, man. Just a minute. I think this is some loose connection. Just give me a minute.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay, sure. Okay, so let us go. We created this bucket, and then okay, we are saying this thing you can create in whatever location you want. Asia Pacific, Mumbai. I'm creating the bucket, and then I have my content. Right, I have my content over here. Right, the bucket name already somebody taken up. Okay, already I think it didn't save properly. If I hit refresh, probably bucket name will be there. What happened? Demo September 6. Create. Conflicting operation is currently in progress. What happened, man? Oh, let me refresh the page once. Let us go and create the bucket. Let us call it something. Demo website September. Create. Okay, we created this bucket. So how do you used to do static website hosting? You go to properties, you can click on this to follow along whatever I'm showing you. You can open this link and keep, right? Not now, I'm telling while practicing. So you say use this bucket to host a website. Don't worry about the redirect request and all that, right? For now we will see this, right? So here is the URL that S3 gives you to open the website after you host it, right? This is given by S3. This is the URL that you have to use to open the website that you are hosting, right? But for some people this might not be practical, that they don't want to use this name, they want to use their own name, right? They want to use their own name like awstraining.com. So how to do that, right? So that generally we will see in the DNS class. But if you want to use this straightforward way, then you have to make sure that your bucket name is also awstraining.com. Instead of using this, if you want to use this, you can play around with DNS, the redirect request and all that, and make it complicated. Or a simpler way is to make sure that your bucket name is also the same as the domain name that you want to use. Okay, make sure that the bucket name is also the same as your domain name. then your DNS related stuff will become simpler to do, right? So if you don't want to use this domain name, for you any URL is fine, then fine, you don't have to do anything. But for some reason you want to use your own domain name, then your bucket name that you are creating, make sure it has the same name as your domain, so it will have a dot in that, right? So even before you create the website, be aware of the URL that you want to use, and it is always better to first create the bucket name, then if that bucket name is available, then you can use that domain name.
Yeah,
Because
but since we're using the
yeah,
since we're using this dot, we need to be very careful, right? As you said before.
yeah, so dot
Correct.
only for the static website, because this bucket don't use for anything else. When you're using static website hosting, you don't use that bucket for anything else, okay? Because we have to change certain permissions on the bucket. So when you're using static website hosting, don't use that bucket for anything else, keep it only for static website hosting. Okay? So if you want to use your own domain name, then obviously your bucket name will have a dot. So which is why if you see, I have some buckets with already the dot enabled, because I might host my own static website in future for my training. So I have my own domain name. So with that same domain name, I created a bucket and kept, so that nobody else will take that name, so that it is available. I just create an empty bucket and kept. So like that, if you want to do it, then you can do, otherwise you don't. It's not compulsory. This is just for people who have their own domain names and who want to use that domain name. So now we don't have a domain name, but still you can do static website hosting. You can use the URL that AWS gives you, so we will use that now, right? So this is the URL to access the website. So how do you configure it? As soon as you say static website hosting, the URL will come. You are also, the format is, you can understand by now, right? It will have your bucket name dot s3 hyphen website, the region name hyphen ap south1 dot amazon aws.com. This is the standard format for your static website hosting URL, right? It is going to be your bucket name dot s3 hyphen website hyphen the region dot amazon aws.com. Use this bucket to host the website. Then you have to specify the index document. What is index document? The home page. Now I'm hosting an application which has a lot of pages. So when I open the URL, which page should be the home page? Usually the home page, people will name it index.html. That's what they're saying. If you have a home page with a different name, you can give that name. Instead of index, you can say home.html, but make sure you have a home.html page in your content. Okay. So I'm going to say my home page is index.html only. So I'm going to say index.html. And then you have an error document. I will show you what is that error document practically, then probably you will understand. Okay. And then you say save. Now you have enabled static website hosting. Now what happens now? I need the content. I have not yet uploaded the content. You can do either way. First you can upload the content, then you can enable static website hosting, or either way, but these steps you have to do. So now I need to upload the content. So I have my content over here, so I'm going to upload, right? I have my content over here. I'm going to upload. Make sure you follow the same folder structure that the developer gives you, otherwise your application may not open properly, right? So I have a folder called style inside my main thing, right? So I'm going to, sorry, so I'm just going to create a folder called style, and inside that I have some files. Same structure I am uploading, right? So we have uploaded our content, right? Now what will happen? Now I can go to the URL and try to see whether my website is working. Now what is it saying? Access denied, it is saying. Why is it saying access denied?
Public access.
Yes, because now even though it's a static website, technically it's an S3 object, because as the end user, he does not know whether it is S3 or what. He is going to open this URL, he expects to see the website, but what he is actually seeing in the website, he is actually seeing the S3 files. So by default the files are private, so which is why the website is not working. Even though we have configured it, when you open the website, it is saying access denied 403, because we have not given the permissions. All our objects are still private, right? Our bucket is private, our object is private. So what you need to do, you need to change the permissions. What permissions you need to change? Just two things you need to change, right? You can go to permissions right? First thing you need to remove the block, right? Because all public access is blocked by default. So you need to remove the block. You can go to edit and you can say remove the block and then save, right? And then you type confirm, right? Now we have just removed the block, still it will not work, right? So next what I need to do, I need to make them give the read permission. So you don't have to go to each file and change the permission to read. You can go to something called the bucket policy and you can add a policy over here, right? So this we have a separate class on policies, but for now you can just go to bucket policy and add the policy. What is the policy? That policy AWS itself has given. So when you click on that, that link, right, when you're creating static website hosting, you have that link that says learn more, right? When you click on that, it will open this documentation, hosting a static website. Now whatever I'm showing you is over here, right? Configuring a bucket for static website hosting using the console. This is what you need to check, right? So we saw this, we enabled the website hosting, we configured the index document, and then what you need to do, you need to set the permission. What is the permission you need to give? If you don't give, you will get this error. This is what we got, 403, access denied. So what you need to know, first thing is you need to remove the block. That's what is done here, same thing what I showed you. Then you need to add a bucket policy, right? Same thing, under the permissions you will see bucket policy. Go there and copy and paste this policy. They have given the policy, just copy this and paste it over here, and you just need to change this example.com to your bucket name, no other change, right? Here they've just given a policy with example.com. All you need to do is change this to your bucket name. What is our bucket name?
Website.
So you just change this to your bucket name. So what this policy is doing is it is making all the objects inside this bucket as public, right? So it is allowing everybody to get the object, right? So here we use the HTTP methods. We cannot say download read, right? What is get, what is read permission? It is called get object, right? So it is allowing everybody, right, to get object, which object inside this folder, inside this bucket, whatever is there. So basically you're making this entire bucket read. So when I say save, it will say it is public. So which is why don't use this bucket for anything else. This is only for, if you are using static website, keep that bucket only for static website. Don't put any other data in that, right? So now we have enabled public access. Now if I go and try to refresh the page, you will see my website, right? It has multiple pages. All these are there in the content. These images, CSS, formatting, all that is there in the website. I don't have any server or anything. This is all coming from S3, right? The home page is index. When I open the URL, it will straight away go to the index.html, because I said index.html is the home page, right? So it will go to index. So if you want to change that, if you want to give what do you say, sorry, you want to give something else as the home page, you can change, right? Here you can say I have some other pages, right? What are the pages? Let me just open, right? Suppose I want the home page to be contact.html, let us say. You can just change it. So whatever you specify here will be the home page, right? I'm saying home page should be contact.html. Save. Now if I open the website, it will go to the contact page by default, because I said contact page is the home page, right? So you can control which is the home page over there. And then you have something called error page, right? So what is error page, right? What is this error document? So for example, say I gave you some URL and that there may be some mistake, or you're entering the wrong URL. Then what will happen? People will get an error like this, page not found, 404, page not found, or something like that. So what is, this is a general, what do you say, browser related, what it is going to throw, what your browser, what reply your browser gets from S3, it is showing it as it is. It is saying code, no such key, because this is what S3 is giving your browser. So maybe you don't want the users to see a page like this, you want them to see some friendly page, then you can specify that, right? I have a page called error.html. Here I have opened that error.html. So here I have put a friendly error message. The page you are looking cannot be found. Please try again, or please contact the administrator. Whatever you want, you can put. I have uploaded that page. It is called error.html. It is there in my S3 bucket. You have to make sure that content is there, otherwise it will not come. Now if I go to this URL, what it will say? It will say the page you are looking cannot be found, because instead of putting the general what do you say message the S3 gives to your browser, I am putting some friendly message. That is up to you. If you want, you can put. If you don't want, you don't want to put. If the website encounters some error, then it will use this error page to, it will show what is there in that error page instead of a general what do you say browser related error. But it's still the same error code, but just a friendly message. That's all. That is up to you, right? So you don't need any server or any such thing, right? So any number of people can access the website, right? It will scale automatically. You don't need to do anything. You just need to pay for the data transfer cost and the request cost, right? You don't need to log into any server. You don't need to install any software or anything. You just need your content. Whatever the content is, it has to be static content, like pictures, images, videos, HTML pages, CSS. All those can be there, but you cannot have any scripts or what do you say coding or those type of things you can't do. Okay, so this is another feature of uh, S3. You can use it for static website hosting, like proof of concept, or you want to host a small website, right? Or only something that is going to be only static. There's not going to be any login or something, right? Those type of things you can do, right? Using this static website hosting, there is no additional cost. The cost is only when people access it. If you don't access it, it is just you pay for the storage. If people access, you pay for the requests. That's all, right? So but main thing is, be careful. Don't use this bucket for anything else. Don't put any other data in this, because this bucket you need to make it read access, right? Sorry, public read access. So don't use this bucket for anything else in real time. Okay, so how do you add the permissions? You remove the block and you go and add this policy and just replace this with your bucket name, right? Okay, if you want, I will give you the static website, or you can just if you're familiar with HTML, you can just create some basic page, 1 or 2 pages. It is the same thing. How to do it, you have to know, right? So let me know if you have any questions on this. Otherwise, I'll remove this bucket. Right, let me go ahead and clean up this bucket. Okay, so we have removed this. We have seen static website hosting. Okay, all right. The next topic what we will see is, we have completed most of the what do you say commonly used stuff in S3, right? So we have hmm, okay, we have a couple of things. Again, this I can show you in the high level now, because some of it requires programmatic access, right? First thing is called MFA delete. These are again small stuffs, right? Features that you should know that are available, right? In the exam, they will not ask you how to do it, but if you have a requirement for something like that, what to do? Those type of questions, you will get a lot of questions in the architect exam. There will not be any question on how to do something. How to do something is only for practical, right? So the next thing that we will see is a feature in S3 called MFA delete, right? So for this you need programmatic access. So don't worry, programmatic access we have separate class, right? So what is this feature called MFA delete? You have to be aware of, right? So MFA delete is, you can so I told you, for example, what do you say, when you do a bank transaction, what happens? First you log in with your ID password, then you initiate a transaction, then what happens? You get OTP. So what is this? This is multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, whatever you want to call it, right? So you get a second layer of authentication. First is your ID password. Second is this. So we call this OTP, multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, right? So same thing over here in S3. If you want to ensure that users cannot delete objects unless they provide MFA code, some very important buckets are there, some very important files are there, right? So you want to protect it from accidental deletion. Even though you have the versioning enabled, you want to prevent it from accidental deletion. Then maybe you can add this additional layer, right? You can make sure that the users, right, cannot delete objects unless they provide the MFA code. Unless they provide their MFA code. Just the ID password login credentials not enough. They have to provide additional MFA code. So you can enforce this. So you can enforce this only using the command line interface. You cannot do it from the console, right? First of all, you can do it only from the CLI, and also in order to do this, your bucket should have versioning enabled. This is the only requirement, right? To use MFA delete, to enforce MFA delete, you have to make sure your bucket has versioning enabled, and then you can enable this only from the CLI. You cannot do it from the GUI, right? Okay, so when you enable this feature, the only user who can remove the objects without MFA is going to be the root user. Who is the root user? That is your email address and password which you use to create the AWS account, which we generally don't use for daily administration, right? So for this you need to use an IAM user. That also we have not seen, but you should be aware what is this feature. We will see this after we talk about policies and CLI, but in the exam you will definitely, most definitely get this question, right? You have some bucket which you want to protect with something, then you will see this option MFA delete. Okay, so MFA delete is the option or a feature that you can enable to ensure people cannot remove objects in the bucket accidentally. They can only remove it when they provide their MFA code, and this can be enabled only from the CLI, and that bucket should have versioning enabled for this feature to work. And the only user who can remove files without MFA is going to be the root user, which anyway we don't use, right? So this is called MFA delete. You should remember this because in the exam it most 8 out of 10 times it comes in the exam, right? From security point of view, right? The next thing is something called pre-signed URL. This is also done programmatically, right? Right? Pre-signed URL. What is pre-signed URL? So this is again, what do you say? It is related to programmatic access, but we can also use it for certain things, right? Programmatic access means this thing also you cannot enable from the GUI. You can only do it from the CLI, right? So what is programmatic access? Anything other than the GUI. So I told S3 can be used as a backend storage for some application, right? The developer is building some application, right? He can use S3 as the backend storage. So maybe some user is logging into the application. Maybe he sees a list of files. These files are stored in S3. So what happens? Who can see these files? Only the authenticated user. And this user is not authenticated to, what do you say, to S3. He is not his AWS credentials. He is logging into this application. He is using this application credentials. He is logging into this application. But he sees some files. This application will show some files for the user, let us say. So he can access those files, but those files are in S3. So what can the developer do? He needs to use something called a pre-signed URL, because this user is not going to give again credentials to S3, right? So his authentication will create some, what do you say, cookies or whatever, right? It will create a pre-signed URL because these objects are technically in S3 and they will be private. Other people cannot access these objects. Only this authenticated user can access without explicitly giving the credentials for S3. Those credentials will be generated automatically For that, your developer has to use the AWS SDK, or what do you say, for Java or for C++, whatever. They have different SDKs for different programming languages. They have to implement that code, that piece of code. That is from the developer point of view. So how we can use, so say for example, I have a file in S3, right? Or say I have say I need to give you some files, right? Say I have a Windows 7 DVD, you want it, so I can upload it to S3 and I can give you access, right? Then what I have to give you AWS credentials. I have to say you log into AWS, right? And then you go to this bucket and take the file. So I don't want to give you AWS credentials because you don't know what is AWS. That is not your headache, right? So what I can do, this object will have a URL, right? Every object has a URL. So I can make it public. If I make it public, then what happens? Anybody can access that file. So it is not a safe method. Making objects public is not the correct way. So you can keep the object private, but still give other people access. By what? By doing what? You can create a pre-signed URL. That is, you are creating a URL with the credentials, something like that. And whoever uses the URL that you give, they can download. Like for example, in Google Drive, you do, right? In Google Drive, maybe if you have used Google Drive for sharing files, you can say share files, and you can say only those with the link can access, and you will get a link, right? Only people with that link can access the file. If people don't know the link, they cannot access. So here also same thing. I can create a link. I don't need to give any credentials. People don't need to log into Google Drive to access that. If they have the link, it will open generally. So here also something similar, right? They don't need to log into AWS or S3. You can give them this pre-signed URL. They just open the link in the browser and they can access the file. And then you can say that the link will expire in some X amount of seconds. It can be up to 7 days. You can say the link expires in 60 seconds, or link expires in 3600 seconds, or link whatever. You convert it into the days or hours that you want, and you can specify that. So the link will not work after that. So you can give access to your private objects without any additional credentials, right? Or it can also be used in programming like this, right? Where you need to access some backend files in the S3, and technically to access anything you need some type of authentication, right? Because people don't make their objects public in real time, right? So that authentication can be embedded in a pre-signed URL. Again, in order to do this, it is only through programmatic access. What is programmatic access? Anything other than the AWS console is programmatic access. So whether it is the CLI or SDKs, it is programmatic access. So for us, it is possible to do it only via the CLI. You cannot do it via the console. So maybe I will quickly try to show you this. So how to install the AWS CLI, right? You just go to AWS CLI in Google, right? Open the first link, and I assume you're all using Windows laptops. So download the Windows installer. It is just like installing any software in Windows. Just download, install, next, finish, right? There is no special, what do you say, special steps for this, right? Download this. It will come as an MSI package. Just double click it, install, next. It will install whatever is required. It will install usually Python and Python libraries and the AWS libraries, right? Just click next, finish. So once you install that, you open the CLI. So to open the CLI, there is no special, again, no software or anything. It is your Windows PowerShell or command prompt. You can use anything, right? There is no special, what do you say, CLI means some special Windows not there. It is your PowerShell terminal or
So
command
Siddharth,
prompt. Yeah.
so Siddharth, this CLI works in only 64-bit.
Yes, in Windows it's only 64-bit. I think they don't have 32-bit version.
Okay.
No, I don't think anybody uses 32-bit anymore. But yeah, I don't think it is there for 32-bit.
And actually, I use it because my laptop is 15 years old laptop. Okay.
Oh, okay. I don't think it is there, right? CLI. I don't think it is there for 32-bit. Even I tried long ago, many years. I mean, 4-5 years. So AWS CLI 32-bit. I think it used to be available. Old one, I'm not sure. Old one, yeah, it is.
Okay.
I think it might be there, but all features may not work. Right? It used to be there,
Okay.
like I remember, but now I'm not sure because I've been default going to 64. But I remember long back it was there, right?
Even because I couldn't upgrade it because it's almost 15 years old laptop
Yeah. So
actually.
that
I
is
got
you
that.
can see, but on the Linux CLI version 2 is region. You can try this version 1, I think. But all features
Okay.
may not work again, because whenever a new feature comes, you need to upgrade the CLI, right? So you can try this
Okay. Okay.
version 1, I think, maybe in 32-bit, because I remember earlier seeing there used to be two links, 32, 64, but since then even I have not paid much attention to it. But probably you can try installing
Okay.
the 64 and see what happens, right?
Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay.
Okay. So it is just the command prompt.
Yeah.
Just the packages are going to be installed, and you open your standard command prompt, right? So it is no problem if you have a old laptop, because anyway in future we are going to create virtual machines in AWS. You can use that to practice. You can create a 64-bit machine on AWS itself, right? This is just on my local machine, because if you want a 64-bit machine, it's very easy these days. In AWS, you create a server and you use that, right? So now we have not gone so far.
Okay.
So I'm just doing it on my own laptop. You can install the CLI anywhere. You can install it on your laptop or on a machine inside AWS. It is the same whether it is Mac, Linux, or whatever. The installation steps will be different, but the commands are all the same. Whether you're using Windows, Linux, or Mac, the commands are standard. There is no difference in the commands that you do it. Okay. So again, you don't worry about the credentials and all that, because I need to create credentials for the CLI to work, because I need to log into the CLI, right? Like how I log into the console, I need to log into the CLI also. Simply if I install the CLI, it will not work, because I have to connect to my account. Now here, if I say AWS S3 LS, this is a command in CLI for S3 to see all the buckets. It will say you have not provided the credentials. Here you cannot give the username password. So here I'm logging in as the user called demo, right? So I cannot use that to log in, right? You cannot log in with your GUI credentials, because GUI credentials are username and password. I told you they will work only in the GUI. That is the AWS console. That is this user demo. I cannot log in as demo in the CLI. I need to give something called keys, right? So all this we will see in the security class, IAM class, but this is just to show you what is a pre-signed URL, right? So I'm going to quickly create some credentials for myself, right, and give the required permissions, right, and let me configure my CLI, right? So here you need to give your credentials like your username and password, but it is not username and password. It is a set of keys, right? So once you give the credentials, your CLI is configured, right? Now, if I say AWS S3 LS, if my credentials are correct, it will show me the list of buckets. Okay, right? So now, say for example, uh, let us create a bucket. I've removed the bucket, right? So let us go ahead. Let us create a bucket again. Something demo step. Let us say 7th, whatever. Right. Let me use. Where is that man? Not project. Yeah. Right. Demo hyphen sub 7. Okay. I've created this bucket. So let me upload some object in this. Sorry. Let me upload some object in this. Right. It can be any object. I'm just showing you. I'm opening a zip file. Sorry, I'm uploading a zip file. Now I need to keep this object private, but give access to somebody. By default, it is private. Now, if somebody tries to use this URL, it will not give anything, right? It will give access denied, right? So now I want to keep this object private, but I want to give somebody access to it. So I can pre-sign this object's URL. What can I do? I can pre-sign this object's URL. So how to do that? You need to do from the CLI. You cannot do from the console. At least now you cannot. Maybe in future they will update the console and add that feature. Currently, it is not possible to do from the console, I think. Okay. So how do you do this? You use the command AWS S3 pre-sign. This is the command, and you specify your bucket demo hyphen sub 7th I think I created slash your object name. What is my object name? Black underscore white dot zip, right? Zip. So, and then I can say this expires in some X number of seconds. It can be up to 7 days usually, right? I will say it will expire in 300 seconds. So when I hit enter, it will give me the URL. This is the output. This is the pre-signed URL. So this URL will be valid for the next 300 seconds. So anybody with this URL in the next 300 seconds, they can access that file. So if I click this, you see it will start downloading the file, right? So I didn't have to log into AWS. I didn't have to make my object public. All I needed to do is just pre-sign the URL. That is, I'm putting my signature on the URL and saying that it will work only for the next 300 seconds. So I can share this URL to whoever needs the file. They can open it automatically. After 300 seconds, that URL will expire. Again, if they try after some time, it will not work. For the next 300 seconds, they can use it as many times as they want, right? So currently, I don't think it is still possible to do this, to enable this pre-sign from the console. You can check whether it is there. I don't think it is still there. Maybe they will update the console. They are still updating. They will keep updating the console every few months. So earlier, some of these features were also not possible. Earlier, it was not possible to change the storage class, or even for that matter, change the object name. It was not possible 4 or 5 years back. But now it is possible to do these things from the console, right? Right. But
So this URL will be, so this URL will, hello, can you hear me?
yeah, good.
Yeah, so this URL will be giving to people for accessing, right? So,
Yeah, so I'm telling it is one of the use case. This is for our
yeah,
what
yeah.
you say from architect point of view. Sorry, this is two of the things. One is programmatic access. That is, you are using S3 as a backend storage for some application, and only authenticated users need to access those files.
Correct. Yeah.
So that programmatically you can implement in Java or C++ or PHP or Python. They have the SDKs for that. The other type of use case is to give access to your private objects to without making it public, so that people don't
Okay.
have to log into AWS. They can just you are putting your signature on this with your access key. This is my access key, and it has a signature. That is why we call it pre-signed. So this is valid only for whatever duration you say. Okay. After 300 seconds, this URL will not work. It will say
Yeah. Okay.
access denied. Okay. So this also at a high level you need to know. Suppose in the exam you will get this type of question. You need to keep your object private but give somebody the access, right? So what do you use for that? You use pre-signed. So no, they are not going to ask you what is the command, or they will not give you the command and ask you which is the correct syntax. Those type of things still don't come in the exam, right? It is not very practical oriented. It is more theory oriented in the exam, right? If you know that we have to use this option, it is enough to clear the exam. But practically you have to do what I just did, right? That's why my classes take a little longer time. Okay, so that is those are two things which often come in the exam: MFA delete and pre-signed URL. Okay, right. The next thing is what we call as uh, yeah. Next we'll look at server access logging. Okay, so let me keep this page open, right? So this is how you are going to, what you say, while practicing, right? So whatever feature I'm showing or whatever I'm showing, right, those steps or the documentation will be over here. Especially for S3, it is pretty easy to find the documentation. So what is this server access logging? Even though it says server access logging, it is actually access logs for your S3 bucket, right? So if you want to track what is happening in the bucket, who is doing what, right? When the object, who is uploading the object, who deleted the object, right? So is somebody changing the permissions of the bucket, those type of things, right? It provides detailed records for requests made to the bucket, right? What are the requests that are made, who made a request to get the object, who made a request to download the object, who made a request to remove the object, all those are going to be tracked, right? So who is going to use this? Mostly your security team or for audits. You may not, you as such may not use the logs, but you may have to enable the logs, so that in future, if it is very important for your company or whatever the project, they require access logs to be enabled, then you need to enable this, right? So this will collect logs with respect to the requests made to the bucket. If you want logs with respect to what is happening to your objects, then you have to go for object level logging, right? So this object level logging is connected to another service called CloudTrail, right? We will see CloudTrail in a separate class, right? So let us not go too much into that, but this is possible. So what is important here is when you enable server access logging, you just enable, you don't do anything. You just say enable logging, it starts collecting the logs. So what is important here is where are the logs stored? The logs are stored in a bucket. So here what you should remember is don't store the logs in the same bucket for which you are logging, right? So what happens when you do that, right? Suppose you have a bucket, suppose your company says all my buckets, all the S3 buckets should have logging enabled for security reasons. Okay, so let us say for example we have a bucket, right, called A. So you are enabling logging for this server access logging, you are enabling. Then where are the logs going to be stored? They will be stored in a bucket. Logs are stored in a bucket. Which bucket? You can specify which bucket. So say maybe you have a separate bucket to collect logs. So you can say store all the logs in this bucket file. But what will happen if you use the same bucket to store the logs? Any idea? So if you use the same bucket to store the logs for this bucket, if you say A enable logging and store the logs in A, then what will happen is for every request a
It's
log
like
will fall. So it will go in a loop. So
loop, yeah.
suppose if I create an object, a log will fall. And because the log fell, for it another log will come. Then for it another log. It will keep on going. So don't use the same bucket to store the logs. Even though you can, but you should not. Right? It will keep on generating log files. So logging, always use a separate bucket to collect the logs. Maybe you can have a separate bucket to collect the logs of all the buckets, or for each bucket you can have its own log bucket. That is up to you. You can create a folder inside and you say logs. You can create a bucket called logs. Inside you can say folder A, folder B, and you can put the logs for A bucket in A folder, B bucket for in B folder. Even though we say folder, outside it will say prefix, right? So prefix is what is the folder, right?
So the server, so that the server access logging is specifically for bucket, right?
Yeah, even though it says server, it is logging the actions for the bucket. Don't get confused
Okay.
with this word server. There is no server here. They call it server access logging. I don't know why, right? So this tracks the request with respect to the buckets, the requests made to the buckets. If you want object specific, you want object level logging, then you have to go to object level logging. So who deleted that object, when they deleted an object? For that you have a different service called CloudTrail. Let me open that. So here you can choose the target bucket. Again, you can enable this and see there is no additional cost. You pay only for the storage, right? Like I said, after you finish practicing, you can remove both the buckets, right? So the logs will be in, what do you say, they are not immediately there. You have to wait for some time, right? It might take half an hour or so for it to start logging and collect the logs, right? How to enable loggings is this thing, right? So what is the what do you say, log format, right? So again, how are the logs delivered, all that thing, right? It collects the logs and it publishes them, right? So it is based on the best effort. So most of them are logged, right? So within a few minutes or a few hours, right? So it is not like immediately you do something, immediately you can see. So you have to wait, right? So usually it takes a few minutes or maybe up to a few hours, right? It is based on best effort and it takes changes over time, right? So once you enable logging, don't immediately expect to see log files. You need to wait for a few half an hour or so usually. ideally. But they say 1 hour, but usually within half an hour you will see logs coming if the bucket is actively used, right? Then what is the log format you need to know, right? So how do the logs look? Because now we cannot wait for so long. So you will see logs like this. This is a log entry, right? So how do you interpret the log, right? First you have something called the bucket owner, right? It is usually going to be a random, what do you say, characters like this, right? So I told you who is going to be the owner of the objects usually, right? I told you in the beginning of S3, right? The root account is always the owner. The the person who is actually creating the bucket or something, he may not be the owner, because tomorrow he might, his account might not be there in AWS. He might leave the company and go, right? So don't worry about the bucket owner as such, right? Then what is the bucket, right? What is the date and timestamp of that action? What is the remote IP? Who is the requester? What is the request ID? What operation was done? Did they put get list or delete? What type of operation was requested, right? What was the object on which it was requested? That is the key, right? All these things are what do you say, recorded. This can be used for auditing or by your security team to find out what is happening, right? The other thing, if you want object level, you can do that also, right? It works along with CloudTrail. CloudTrail is another security related service which is going to track all changes in your AWS account, right? This we have a separate class, but let me mm, open this and also show you what you can see here, right? CloudTrail, it usually it does not track S3 object level activity, but you can enable that. So here if you see, right, in my account, whatever I have done is tracked, right? Here you see we created a bucket, we removed this bucket, right? Right, we created this demo website sub bucket, right? And then we deleted it. So you can track this thing, which user did, what is the source IP from where he did, what was the action that he did, on which he did. So if somebody removes a bucket, you can see who removed it, right? So here you see we updated the bucket configuration, that is static website. We enabled, we disabled, right? We enabled static website and then we removed it, right? We added a bucket policy to make that bucket read, right? We put bucket policy, right? So everything is tagged. So even when I log into my AWS account, it will show that I logged in. So if you see in the morning today, we I logged in probably, right? So you will see an entry for that, or probably yesterday I logged in, it is still using the same session, right? We did this replication, right? We did this replication today, right? So like this, the stuff is logged. Okay, so who is doing what? So here you see I logged in yesterday morning. I started taking class, still I have not logged out, right? So here you see login is there, console login. This user logged in yesterday morning 7:50 from this IP, console login. So this is a service that is going to track a lot of activity. S3 related also, it tracks when you change configuration, those things. But if you want S3, what do you say, object level tracking, then you need to enable that. That we will see in CloudTrail separately, right? So those are called data events, right? For S3, suppose you want to select all your buckets in S3 and track all the read write operations, you can do that also, right? All S3 buckets or a specific S3 bucket, you can do it. This is object level activity. Who is doing what to a specific object, you can track. It is the same thing that you see in the S3 console, object level logging. That is configured over here, right? At the bucket level, if you are changing the bucket properties, right, the bucket features, right, we saw versioning, those things, if you change, it will be in CloudTrail. Specific requests for the object, if it changes anything, right, those can be logged over here using object level API activity. Okay, so we will see that in CloudTrail. Let us not go into too much of security now, but that feature is also there, right? Okay, right. Let us. We have seen that server access logging, and then now, yeah. Now we probably have just one more topic left, I think, and then we can close S3, right? From general practical use and what do you say, exam point of view. Again, there are still a lot of stuff there in S3, but again, like I said, you cannot learn any service completely. These are the core things that we saw. If you see any other features you want to try out, you can try out. Now you know what is S3, what it is used for, what are its main features, right? There are a lot of other features also, but yeah, you can go through them. If you have any doubt, or if you want to know how to use a particular feature, or if you are stuck somewhere, you can let me know. Okay, right? So I think we have another half an hour, so let us quickly
Okay.
wind up one more topic, right? It does not come under S3, but we are going to use S3 for that. It is called CloudFront, right? So this comes under the category of CDN, or Content Delivery Network. Content Delivery Network. Have you heard of this Content Delivery Network anywhere? Right. Okay. So I will just try to quickly explain it. Right. CDN is a general term. The service provided by AWS for CDN is called CloudFront. So there are other providers called like Akamai, right, Edgecast, right. So what is Content Delivery Network? So say for a very simple example, take for example YouTube, right. So in YouTube, what happens? Somebody is uploading videos, right, and somebody is, what is the other side? People are seeing the videos, right. There is somebody uploads content and somebody views the files, right, views the videos. So how does it work in the background? So where are they storing the videos? Where do they store the videos? Right. So they store it on some server or some storage, right. They store the videos somewhere. So where is this located? Okay, YouTube is a US company, so they have in the US. So where are the viewers? They can be anywhere, they can be across the world, right. They can be in the US, they can be in Europe, they can be in India, right. They can be in Singapore, they can be in Australia, they can be in Africa, they can be all over the world. There are millions of people, millions of views going, right. So what happens when somebody from the US tries to access the video? Comes from the server, he is watching the video. What if somebody from Europe is accessing, or India is accessing this? The content is coming from US, right. The content is stored on their server. So is this what they do? No. So what do these applications or these websites, how do they serve their content? This is a lot of people use this now. So content means it can be anything. It can be images, it can be videos, it can be the entire the website itself, right. So if you have users across the world or in different locations, right, so how can you improve the performance? Because if a user in India, for him, if the video has to come from the US every time, then it might be slow, it might be buffering, if he, especially if he has low bandwidth. Suppose he has only 1 Mbps internet line, or he's watching on his phone, the speeds are not very good sometimes, right. But still, how is he able to watch the video without any buffering or what do you say, latency in most of the cases, right? Because what these people do is they use something called a content delivery network. It might be their own network, or they might use a third party like AWS or Akamai or Edgecast, right. So what these CDN providers do is, what this content delivery network actually is, what it is made up of, it is made up of some locations around the world, right. They will have locations in the US, in the Europe, right, in India, right, in Africa also, maybe, right, maybe in Australia, right. Let us take Singapore. So they will have these locations around the world. This content delivery network provider, whether it is CloudFront, AWS, or Akamai. Akamai is the largest CDN provider in the world. It is the oldest and one of the largest content delivery networks in the world. So this Akamai, they own locations around the world. They have infrastructure across the world. So what happens when somebody wants to use this content delivery network? Say you are distributing a lot of videos which people in different countries watch, like Amazon Prime, Netflix, all those things. So right, so those same videos people are watching in different countries. So what do they do? Right, so they will have one main location, which will usually be called the origin. Right, this you need to know at a high level, but we will see some configuration also. Right, okay. So here the terms that we use is this, right? Origin is the place where the files are originally stored. This is the origin of all your files. So say for example, Netflix, they store their files in some origin, all their videos, right? All their they put all their videos in some location, maybe in the US, right? Then what happens whenever somebody from US tries to access that video? Then what happens is, if they use a CDN like Akamai, or I think Netflix uses CloudFront, right? They use AWS for their infrastructure, but whatever it is, right? So what happens when they use a CDN provider is, right? That CDN provider is there in between, let us say, right? Even though we should not say in between, he is located around the world. So what happens is when somebody from AWS is, from US is trying to access the file, then the content will first be taken to the US location. So these are called edge locations. This is what I told you, for transfer acceleration and for some special purpose. This is the special purpose. These are called edge locations. So in AWS, the edge locations are used for CloudFront. So when you use transfer acceleration, it is actually using CloudFront in the background. So all these are edge locations. These are locations which are there around the world. It is not just one location. In India, they might have 3, 4. That infrastructure is maintained by that service provider, whether it is Akamai or AWS. They have their infrastructure. It is called edge locations. Whether in AWS or outside, the general term is what do you say? Edge location, right? So these are also data centers located across the world, right? It is not just one edge location per country or per region. It is multiple. That is managed by the service provider. You don't have to do anything. So when a user from US tries to access the video, maybe suppose there are 100 people who are going to access the video. Somebody is going to access it the first time, right? Or what they will do is they will cache that content over here. They will cache that video over here in this location, so that for all the users, the experience is faster. Same thing, if people from India are accessing, then the content will be cached over here, so that all the people in India, for them the content will come from India. Suppose the India edge location has a problem, then for them the content may come from Singapore, because it is the next closest edge location, right? So this thing is handled by the CDN. So this company, they don't need to maintain the edge locations. They can just use a service provider who has these edge locations, and they can configure their, what do you say, we call it a distribution. They can configure it on how to distribute it, and how long to cache it, how long to keep it in the cache, when to clear the cache, because when it is stored in the cache, it occupies space, right? So the cache will have some time to live, like 1 day or 6 days or something. You can configure like that, right? So once the cache expires, the object will expire, and the next time somebody tries to access, again it will cache it, right? Or let us say you updated the file, right? You updated the file, then you want to remove the old file from the cache, then you can invalidate the cache. You can invalidate the cache. That is, you are manually clearing the cache so that it caches the new one. Otherwise, it will expire only after some time. Then maybe people might still see the old file, right? So this is content delivery. CloudFront also same concept. Whether it's Akamai or CloudFront or Edgecast or any content delivery provider, this is the concept. So where people, companies can distribute their content across the world, by minimizing latency and improving speed for the users. That is the main thing for this, right? So these days a lot of website use it, including Amazon, Flipkart, all these people. We saw the URL, right? So what is the origin? So in our case, your origin can be S3. It can be multiple things in AWS, because we are talking about AWS. Your origin can be S3, it can be a virtual machine, it can be a load balancer, it can be a server on premises also. You can have your content on premise also, and you can use only CloudFront in AWS. But your server on premises server has to be accessible by CloudFront, because what is CloudFront doing? It is taking files from the origin and caching it and then serving to the user automatically, right? So that serving to the user is handled by CloudFront. If somebody in US opens, CloudFront will automatically serve the content from US. If somebody from India is opening, it will automatically serve from India. If India location is down, it will automatically serve from the next closest location which it thinks is fastest, right? So you don't have to worry about these locations. You just have to do some configuration on what is the origin. That is, you have to specify where you store your files, so that it can take the files from there and cache it as the user is making a request for it, right? So this is what basically CloudFront is. So in AWS, the edge locations are used for CloudFront, right? You cannot use them directly. It is used for CloudFront. So basically the architecture will look something like this. You will have a origin, right? Because we are using AWS, let us talk with respect to that. In AWS, what can you use as an origin? You can use S3 as an origin. You can use EC2 instance, that is a virtual machine, as an origin. You can use a load balancer as an origin. You can use some DNS record as your origin. So we are going to use S3 because we have learned only S3. But the configuration is mostly similar, because mostly this CloudFront or whatever is a developer topic. But as an architect, you should know the basic of it, right? Basic configuration, you should know how it works. Because again, this will come in the exam as a question, like your company has a website or an application or a video service which people across the world use. How do you improve the latency or the throughput for the user so that they get a good experience, right? So CloudFront is the answer. So they are not going to ask you to create a distribution or whatever, but we should know how to do it. What are the components for practical purpose, right? So origin is the origin of all your files, the origin of all your original files, where you keep your original files. It is the origin for all your files, the location where you keep your files, where you keep the files, where you keep the files, where you keep the file. So we will use S3. We will use a S3 bucket. S3 means what? Obviously S3 bucket. So for us, our origin will be a S3 bucket in this example, right? And then how the content is going to be served. So you have the end users over here. They can come from different countries or continents, whatever it is. So these are the end users who are going to access your content, right? And then what we create is a distribution. It is called a distribution. It contains the edge locations. It contains the edge locations that you specify. It contains the group of edge locations that you can specify. So what happens is CloudFront will take files from here and it will cache it in the distributions that you specify, right? In the we create the distribution. It is a collection of edge locations. What is a distribution? It is a collection of edge locations. Okay, it is a collection of edge locations. So here is where the content from here is going to be cached. So when somebody makes a request, suppose this particular user is coming from US, maybe for him the content will come from the US edge location. If this user is coming from India, maybe the content will come from the India location. If India location is not there, then it will come from the next closest location. Maybe you are using Singapore, right? So what we are going to create is, we are going to create this configuration. Okay, we are going to create this configuration. We are the users. Okay, we are the users. We are in India. Okay, so we need to create this configuration, right? So I hope you guys have some time, because creating this will take around 15-20 minutes at least, right? So I will show you how to configure this, but a lot of the configuration involves some developer related information, right? But some basic configuration that you need to know, we need to do. Okay, so how do you do this, right? So first of all, you create your origin. Make sure you have a origin. So we are using S3, so we will use some bucket for it, right? I will use this bucket. Let us say, let me remove this. I use this for pre-sign, right? So let me just remove this object. I will simply use a small image file to show you the demo, right? So the how these people, Amazon, all these people are doing, you will get an idea, right? So let me quickly upload a file, right? Let me upload this file. Okay, so I'm going to make this bucket public again, right? Because if the content needs to be served, the objects need to be accessible. But real time, they don't make it public like this. They use something called OIA, or origin access identity. That is again developer topic, but we will not go deep into that. But your objects need to be accessed publicly. Like I said, now if you look at this Amazon URL or Snapdeal URL, right? I told you they use S3 for storing their objects or something like that, right? So if you take this object URL, you see something, right? Copy image address. If I paste this over here, you will see something like this, right? I know it is probably S3, but here you don't see the S3, what do you say, URL path. You see something else, SDL CDN. That means Snapdeal Content Delivery Network. But they are using CloudFront. But they can put their own domain name. They can put their own domain name. Why they are able to put their own domain name? Because they are using CloudFront. Instead of using embedding the S3 URL, they use the CloudFront URL. So what is happening here is, right? So we will go ahead, right? What was I going to do? I was going to make it public. So how do you make it public? You can just use the same bucket policy that we used for static website hosting, or you can make your object, what do you say, public while uploading it. Same thing, right? Yeah. Permissions, we go. First we remove the block, right? Because we are going to serve the content from the bucket, right? So first let us do this. This is actually not required. Mostly people in real time, they use origin access identity, the developers, so that they don't make the buckets public like this. But for the sake of demo, probably we can do it, right? So we just copy the bucket public, what do you say, the policy which is there, right, to make the object public. Or you can make just one object, means you can just make it public quickly, right? I'm just going to quickly copy this and put it over here, right? All right. Now, how do I access this object? Using this URL. I use the image so that you can see it in the browser, right? You can see the file. So how is it being accessed? Via the S3 URL. So if your developer needs to use this object, he needs to embed this URL in his page. So when he uses this particular URL, what happens? The file is coming from this bucket. Where is this bucket located? US. So every time this file is being served from US. You get the idea? Now in Snapdeal, if they embed this image using the S3 URL, then what happens? Every time the page loads, this file is being served from US East. Right? Every time this file is coming from US East, North Virginia, from this bucket, it is coming every time. Right? So now with CloudFront, what is going to happen is, so we go to CloudFront, it will be in a separate service, right? Global Content Delivery Network. So you go to CloudFront, and what we do is we create a distribution. This is what we are going to configure, right? Whatever I have circled in green is what we are going to configure, right? So we call that a distribution. The entire thing we generally call a distribution, right? Okay, I already have a distribution. Okay, yeah, I created in the for the previous class, I think. No problem. Let us quickly create another distribution, right? Don't worry about this. Is which I created for the previous class. It is called demo bucket 11. Forget about that. We will use our own distribution, right? So there are two types of distributions. One is called a web distribution. One is called RTMP. RTMP nobody really uses, and it's also going to be stopped from this year end. So don't worry about RTMP. This is used for Adobe media streaming kind of stuff, right? Anyway, Flash is also going to be stopped from this end of this year. So RTMP is no longer valid, right? So what we are going to use is a web distribution. You can distribute any types of files, whether it is images, videos, or entire applications, websites. It can be anything. We are using it to, what do you say, for images. Okay, so you say get started, right? The concept is here. You store your files in an origin. It can be a S3 bucket or a web server or whatever, right? We are using an S3 bucket as our origin. You say get started and you give your origin name, domain name. If it is something in AWS, you will see it over here. If it is a bucket, load balancer, or an instance, or a DNS, it will show here. If it is on premises, then you have to give your server's IP or its URL. That is, it should be able to take the files from here. For us, it is a S3 bucket. What is our bucket name? Just look for it. Mine is demo September 7. This is my origin. This is where I am storing all my files, right? From here, AWS will take the content. CloudFront will take the content, right? You can just put your mouse next to this. This is the origin, right? This is my bucket, right? Then origin path. Suppose you want to serve content only from within a folder that is prefixed, you can specify that, right? You want to request content only from a specific directory in your bucket or in your custom origin, you can specify that. I don't have a specific path. I want to serve everything in the bucket, right? So don't change this origin ID and all that stuff, right? And you can say about this restrict bucket access. So I made it public so that we can access it straight away, right? But in practical, right, people are going to use authenticate. Only authenticated users can see the content. Then you need to say restrict bucket access so that people can straight away not access the object. They can access it only via CloudFront using signed URLs. That is your developer's work, not your headache, right? Suppose they have an application, suppose in Prime Video or whatever, you can see the video only if you're logged in, right? You cannot straight away just open the, you cannot log in, you cannot give that path to somebody else. They will not be able to open, right? Because the developers have implemented some signed URLs or signed cookies, right? So that is again the developer side. So we are not using signed URLs or signed cookies. So we will just say no, right? So this origin connection attempts, timeout, all this is what you say. How many times it should try to contact the origin, right? So what is happening here? CloudFront is contacting the origin, right? It needs to take the file from origin. It will contact the origin. Origin will give the file. It will cache it. So how many times it has to try to attempt to contact the origin? How long it has to wait for a reply? Those type of things for every request. That's what these two are. Okay. How long it is going to wait when trying to establish a connection to the origin, right? And all these host header and all these things, don't worry, these are all specific to the developers, right? We can just leave them at default. And then you have the cache behavior. Do you want to direct HTTP to HTTPS? This is the most commonly used thing, because your developer, right, when he's embedding the URL, he does not have to say HTTPS. He can just put the URL automatically. What do you say? The request goes over HTTPS. You need to give a SSL certificate for that, right? We will come back to that in the bottom option. Next is allowed HTTP methods. So mostly content delivery is used to serve content. That is get. That is people are watching your content or seeing your content. But in some cases, you want to allow people to post content also. Now, if you take big sites like what do you say, Instagram, Flipkart, TikTok, and all those things, what they are probably using, They are using CloudFront not only to serve content, also to accept content. So if you are uploading some video to YouTube, so you are probably not uploading direct to their origin. You are not going directly to their origin. You are probably going to the edge location. From there, it will take to the origin. Because when you are uploading a video, it has to be fast, right? All that is developer headache, but it is possible, right? CloudFront is not used only for distribution, that is for viewing purpose. It can also accept, what do you say, uploads from the users for certain applications like YouTube, right? All those things. It is purely to improve the user, what do you say, experience, right? So we are going to use it to only to get the files. We are not going to what do you say, use any programming to accept files, but it is possible, right? If your application is going to what do you say, post or put, that is put files or remove files or like those kind of things are also possible to use CloudFront, right? And then all these things you can just leave, right? So here you have the cache settings, right? So this is a new setting, right? It came very recently, hardly 2-3 months ago. Even I have not what do you say, gone through what is this, because like I said, we don't do this every day, right? They have this new option called use cache policy and origin request policy. I need to check what is that, but the old setting was pretty simple, right? Caching, how long do you want to cache, right? How long do you want to cache, right? What is the minimum TTL, what is the maximum TTL, what is the default TTL in seconds? That is how long it is going to cache, right? So when an object is cached, how long to keep it in the cache, right? These are some basic settings that you need to be aware of. Then here you have this restrict viewer access. Again, this is related to the origin access identity which we saw on top, right? So do you want people only with who have logged in, only they should be able to access straight away? What do you say, unauthenticated user should not be able to use it. Then your developer can enable this, and in the programming he needs to do that, so that only people who are authenticated with signed URLs or signed cookies, they can access it, right? Then again, compress objects, all that you don't have to worry, right? Then what is important is distribution settings. So which edge locations you want to use, this is the distribution. This is the actual place where your content is going to be cached. This is the distribution. So which distribution, I mean, AWS has, I think, 3 categories. One is all locations, one is US and Canada, Europe, and one is US, Canada, Europe, Asia, Middle East, or all. Do you want to use all the edge locations, or do you want to use only edge locations in these 3 continents, or do you want to use edge locations in these 5 continents? That is up to you. If you have users across the world, you want to use all edge locations. If you have only users in US and Canada, you can use only US, Canada, Europe, right? If you have users in these 5, so the price varies depending upon the what do you say, the category you choose. So AWS has edge locations across the world. Do you want to make use of all of them? That is up to you, right? So I will use these 3. The second one, right? These 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So it will not use any edge locations in Australia, right? It will use, I think pretty much other continents are covered over here, right? So you can put whatever you want. I will use this because if you put all, it will take a long time to create the distribution. We might have to wait for up to 15 minutes, right? So I will put this, right? And then here is where you give your domain name. If you have your own domain name, like how Snapdeal has, right? Then you can give your own domain name. Otherwise, it will randomly give you a domain name that will have the word CloudFront in it. So if you don't want that, you can give your own domain name. If you have your own domain name, right? Suppose I have my own domain name. I can say whatever, media.mydomain cdn mydomain.com or whatever, which is what Snapdeal has done, right? They are using this domain n2.sdlcdn.com, right? So you can give your domain name over here if you have it, right? I don't have my own domain name at the moment, so we will use whatever CloudFront is giving. And then SSL certificate, because we said HTTPS, you need to provide a certificate. So certificate is also given to you by default by CloudFront. If you have your own SSL certificate, you can also import that. This we will see in the security class, Amazon Certificate Manager. But because we are saying HTTP to HTTPS, our content will be served over HTTPS. So for HTTPS, you need a SSL certificate that is also provided by default by CloudFront if you don't have your own SSL certificate. And then the other stuff. What is the HTTP method you version you want to use? We are going to use all the versions because some applications might be on HTTP 1.1, but mostly everybody is on HTTP 2 these days. And other things are logs and all that stuff. That's all not important for us, right? And then you say create distribution, right? So we are creating this distribution, the second one, bottom one, September 7. So it will take a few minutes to create the distribution. It is not instant because it has to, what do you say, do some configuration in the background for all the locations that we set. Okay, and you get your own domain name, right, for CloudFront. So here what happens is, right, we have this domain name and then we have our object, right? Okay, now what happens is, right, so if you want to access the object via CloudFront, then you use this URL. If you want to access the object via S3, you use this URL. So what does that mean? If you use this URL, the second one, that means the object is coming from S3 every time, right? If your developer embeds this URL in his application, in his web page, then from where is the content coming? It is coming from this bucket. Where is this bucket? In US. So every time your content comes from US. But if your developer uses this URL, that is the CloudFront URL, then the content will be cached in the edge location, and then from there it will be served to the user. It will take it from the S3 bucket and cache it. Now you understand the difference why Snapdeal you don't see the S3 bucket name, because they are using their own domain name here. Because we don't have our domain name, CloudFront is giving us a domain name. Otherwise, you can put your own domain name, right? You can have a folder, whatever, you can serve your content. So that's why Amazon, Flipkart, all these sites, you will see.
Can I come up last? Can I come up the last point? The difference between these two last point.
Yeah. So where do we have our object? We have it in S3, right? So this object has a URL. What is the URL? This, right? So if I embed this URL in my page, in my web page, okay, or let me just open and show you that. What is that? I think I have a HTML page with that. Let me quickly open and show you that. The difference you will know. I had opened some files, right? 1 minute, yeah. Because I'm not very good at HTML also. Let us go over here. Okay, no problem. Let us, anyway, the distribution will take a couple of minutes to create. Meanwhile, let us just go and see HTML embed image. What is the code? I think img src or something will come. Yeah. Right. So you are going to put something like this, right? img src, something like this. Let us take our HTML page and let us embed the image. So here what URL you need to give? Let us say I'm giving the S3 URL. What is my S3 URL? Where is that, man? Where is that page? Yeah. This is where my object is, right? Where is that file, man? Index.html, right? So let me see if this is opening. Okay, index.html. I have saved a HTML file. Let us see whether it is opening. Okay. So now what is happening? You see, it is taking this image from where? From S3. If I say copy image address, where is the image coming from? It's coming from S3. That is, it is coming from this bucket, right? Every time it is coming from this bucket. So maybe you saw first time it took a little longer time to load the page, right?
Yeah.
So this image is coming from S3. Now I don't want it to come from S3. It is stored in S3, but I want it to come from CloudFront. So what I need to do is you need to use the CloudFront URL, right? This is the CloudFront URL for the image. Instead of this S3 part, you replace it with the CloudFront URL, right? Wait, let me just take it from here again, right? You replace it with the CloudFront URL. That is the format. That is the syntax, right? If you have an object which is going to be served through CloudFront, this is how you specify it, slash the image name. Now what happens when somebody opens the page? The content comes from CloudFront. It doesn't come from S3. That is, CloudFront is serving that content, not S3 directly. You will still see the same image. Now if I refresh this page, now you see it is not showing because my CloudFront is not yet created. My CloudFront is probably taking a few minutes to create, or maybe my code is wrong, right? But now what happens? This browser stuff, no, it will keep.
So here the CloudFront takes data from edge
S3.
location.
Yeah, from it takes from S3 and puts it in the edge location, and from edge location it sends to you, right? So probably my
Yeah.
HTML coding some mistake is there, but yeah, I think I can say, yeah, I should say HTTP. I forgot to say that, right? Now if I try to open the page, where is that page again? Where is that page? Yeah. Now if you see, the same image is loading, but where is this image coming from? It is coming from CloudFront, right? It is coming from CloudFront, right? It is coming from CloudFront. It is not coming from S3. So what is happening here?
The image is served by
CloudFront. So CloudFront is going to S3. It is taking the file. It is catching it in the edge location. From the edge location, it is coming to me. So even if my S3 bucket is unavailable for some time, my content user can still access, because it is now cached over here for some time. Or maybe if this location is down, the content will come from here. So I said use the distribution, use US, India, sorry, US, Asia, like this I use. So it will use those edge locations. It will not use the other locations. It does not mean people from the other locations cannot access. Guy from Australia can also access. For him, it will probably come from Singapore or from some location in Asia, because it is probably closer to him, right? So this is why
So
you don't see Snapdeal or Flipkart. You don't see the S3 URL. You will see their own domain name, because they are using content delivery with their own domain name. Earlier, Snapdeal, it used to
yeah.
show the CloudFront URL, but now they have just put their own domain name. That's all.
Okay. So here the point, the catch is whenever the S3 or something, I mean the region is down. Okay. With the help of this catch in the edge location, we are able to keep up the website or content live. Correct?
Yeah, it is one of the thing. That is not the main thing. Main thing is to improve the, what do you say, the performance of the website, especially if
Okay.
you have people across the world accessing, and especially if you have heavy content like pictures and images. Small text files, PHP files, those might not be a big difference. But when you have images or videos, I told you, people expect it to load at the same time. First, if the text loads, then slowly the image loads, means that user experience is not good, right? That is the main use for CloudFront, to distribute your content across the world, especially when you have people from across the world accessing it, right? And you don't have offices across the world. You have your data center in a single location, but your applications are what do you say, they are heavy in media, especially pictures. Suppose you take any news website or whatever, they are not going to store multiple copies of their files. They will store it in S3 or some storage, and they will call that file multiple times. So you can do that straight away with S3, right? You can store your image in S3 and directly embed the S3 URL. It will show. But if it is a video or a picture or something, every time coming from S3, is a lot of data being transferred, right? For some people, the experience might not be good, so people use this. So even if this location is having some problem, still the content can come from the cache if it is there in the cache. If the cache is expired or it is not there in the cache, obviously it will not show anything, right? So that is the use of CloudFront, and it also has an additional feature, right? It has other features also, but one of the main features is, right, our distribution is the second one, right? It's called a distribution. This is the URL. How do you know your object's URL if you are using S3? The format is simple. You just remove the S3 part and replace it with the CloudFront URL, right? If you have a folder slash, that is what they have done over here, right? Here is the folder, and then the object name, right? This last part is the object. What are all these? Are the prefix or the folders. I know they are using S3 because earlier their URL used to show CloudFront. Now they have updated it to use their own domain name. That is them, right? So you, wherever you put your object, the path is the same, right? If you have aws.png inside a folder, you put that folder here slash however you organize your files and data. Just the S3 part of the, what do you say, URL is replaced by the CloudFront URL. After this slash, whatever is there, it is the same, right? How do you know the URL? This is the URL. Suppose your developer asks you to upload a file and give him the URL. You upload the file and you give him the CloudFront URL if you are using CloudFront. Otherwise, you give him the S3 URL. He will embed this. He will embed those objects or those files, right? So now another feature over here is, right, if you go into your distribution, you can modify the options which we just configured. You can change the price class and all that stuff, other things you can say. But what we are interested in is the restrictions. So here in CloudFront, you have an option called geo restriction. By default, it is not enabled. So what does geo restriction do is, right, when you go to geo restriction, you can either enable or disable. So let us enable it. So you have two types, whitelist, blacklist. So here using geolocation, what you can say is, say you want only people in India to view the content, right? Your content, only in people in India should be able to view the content. Then you can add India to the whitelist. Then only people in India can see the content. If the request comes from anywhere else, it will not work. Or the other way around. If you want to, what do you say? If you want to block people from India seeing the content, you can add India to the block list. I will do it and show you, right? So now we have the page, right? So let me go say blacklist and I will add India. So this is not the distribution. Distribution edge locations, you are using whatever you want. But if the request comes from India, then the content should not be shown. Now let me refresh this page. No problem. My browser itself has cached this file. That is another headache. Okay, what was that file? 1 minute. Let me open it again. What was our file? Index.html, right? Let me open it again. Okay, now you see the picture is not shown. Or I can straight away open the picture URL also. No big deal. I can straight away, instead of embedding this, if I want to show you, I can just copy this URL in the browser. It should show me the image, right? But it will not show me the image. It will give me a error. What is it saying? The CloudFront distribution is configured to block access from your country. Because I blocked India, because I am coming from India now, the content will not be shown in India. This error message, again, you can, what do you say, you can customize. Because sometimes if you open Netflix or whatever, some content is not available in India, some content is available only in US. So how do they know you're coming from US, or how do they know you're coming from India? They're using CloudFront. So that based on your IP, it will automatically identify where you're coming from. Right, now here you see, even though I'm using the India edge locations, it does not mean people in India can see. You can block them from seeing the content. That is why in my page the content is not coming. Now earlier it came, now it didn't come. Why? Because I have blocked that content. The opposite is whitelist, right? Whitelist is you want to allow people only from this country to see, right? Whitelist is you want to allow only people from India to see, let us say. Then you whitelist India. So everywhere except India, people cannot see. Now if I go and open the object, again I just enabled. So let us just wait. It will probably take a few seconds, right? I hope I did it correctly, right? Yeah, whitelist. I added India. So India, only India is in the whitelist. So only people from India will be able to see the content. Now, again, your browser might cache it or whatever. You just have to wait and refresh, right? Now it is coming. You see. But now if some user from US or Singapore or somewhere tries to access, it will not come. So you have two options. You can blacklist or whitelist one or a group of countries or continents, whatever is there in the list. This is an additional feature of CloudFront that is called geo restrictions. This also sometimes comes in the exam. You want to restrict access to a particular uh, country, or you want to allow access only to a particular country to requests coming from a particular country. Then you can use either blacklist or whitelist. You cannot use both. It is what you say, inverse. If you want to allow only India, add India to the whitelist. If you want to block India, add India to the blacklist. Or if you want to allow only say America and this, both add both these to the whitelist. So only requests coming from here will be allowed. So like that they have a list, right? Either it's a country or a continent or a state or whatever. This is the list that is available, right? So this is from where the requests are coming, not the distribution. Your content is still, what do you say, all these locations are used to cache your content, so it does not mean people in all these countries can access your content. You can block them from accessing. Okay, so this is CloudFront. Okay, it's a content delivery network from AWS, right? Pretty much all other content delivery providers, they also follow the similar what do you say, similar style of operation or similar configuration. Their interface might be different, but most of them are the same. Okay, so after you finish practicing CloudFront, go and you need to remove the what do you say, the distribution. So to remove it, first you need to disable it. So after you practice, make sure you disable the distribution, right? It will again take a few minutes for it to disable, right? It does not happen immediately. So after it is disabled, you will see something like this: state disabled, right? And then you can delete it. Otherwise you can't delete it. The state has to be in disabled, right? Just wait for this in progress to complete to deployed, but state has to be disabled. Then you can delete the distribution. When you delete the distribution, only the distribution is deleted. Your S3 bucket will be as it is. It does not delete any files. It only removes the cache and all that stuff. Your S3 bucket will be as it is. So after you finish practicing, you can remove the S3 bucket also. Right? So removing CloudFront, it does not remove your origin. Your origin is independent of your CloudFront. Your CloudFront is just accessing your origin to get the files. Okay. So with this, a lot of S3 is complete. So in the next classes, we will start with some new topic, right? Mostly we will start with the VPC, the networking part. Okay. So in the next couple of days, what I'll do is I'll upload these videos, right? And I'll also share some exam related questions. Practical, I have shown you where to get the documentation as you practice. I hope you have taken note of the at least the headings of the topics, so that you can practice them. But if you are looking for 100% purely exam related what do you say, material, I will share some exam related questions also. Okay, just by Monday or Tuesday I will share the questions. You can just parallel, at least for S3. You don't have to go through all the questions, just S3 related questions, because other services anyway we will not understand because we have not seen. So just S3 related questions, I will try to split it and share it so that you know what type of questions come in the exam also.
Okay.
Right, so I will catch you guys next weekend. In between, if you have any doubts or you are stuck, you feel free to message me and I can connect to your machine, or I can just have a half an hour class or something and try to. Don't wait till the next class if you are stuck somewhere. Right, try to find the answer. Otherwise, you can just ping me with a screenshot of your error or something like that, and we can try to fix it. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Okay, guys. Right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.